Welcome to the Three Down Nation podcast. I'm Justin Dunk, joined by ESPN NFL Draft analyst and insider Matt Miller. He has covered the NFL Draft since 2010. You can follow him on X and Instagram at NFL Draft Scout. Matt, thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Let's get right into it. I'm curious, you being an American and following the NFL Draft for as long as you have, when did Wilfrid Laurier University quarterback Taylor Elgersma come onto your 2025 NFL Draft radar?
I will be honest with you. It was when the Senior Bowl announced that he was going to be attending this year. That was I think the first time his name hit my database. We try to do as much work as we can to get every player who's draft eligible, every player who you think has a draftable grade. But he had flown under my radar, and that's probably on me a little bit. But thank God the Shrine Game and Senior Bowl exists because they definitely opened that exposure to different prospects. So it was a little bit of a scramble drill to get familiar with his game before the Senior Bowl. I really went to Mobile with like no expectations, or preconceived notions about what Taylor could do as a quarterback. And it was fun to have that, kind of blank notebook and just start from scratch.
You were there live at the Senior Bowl for the entire week in the game. So how would you assess Elgersma's performance during the 2025 Senior Bowl event?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, and I do this with small school American prospects as well, is you just want to see, do they fit in? When you're going against, the Power Four conferences, when you're going against the elite programs from the SEC or the Big Ten, you just want to see, okay, does this player fit in from a physical ability standpoint, from a size standpoint? And Elgersma definitely fit in. I think especially in the group of quarterbacks we had this year, his deep ball power showed up. He moves the ball with really good velocity. He had good accuracy throwing down the field. And there's obviously an adjustment period. You're throwing to receivers you've never thrown to before. And for him, you're on a different field than you've ever been on before with, different formations and alignments and rules. So I thought just as a natural thrower, he stood out. Like checked all the boxes there. And so from then you kind of dig in a little bit more. I liked his aggressiveness. I liked the timing that he threw the ball with, especially as we got later in the week. Now, how will he adjust to an NFL style of game? There's no way to judge that in a week of practices, really. That's just going to be a matter of game time. But everything I saw that week from an arm talent perspective, like it checks the boxes. And I think mobility wise, that's probably the biggest obstacle for him is, the ability to move in the pocket, to evade sacks, to, find passing windows. That was the part of his game that I left Mobile wanting to see a little bit more of. And it has been a little difficult to get the all 22 footage from Canada to be able to evaluate his game. But thankfully, I was able to get my hands on a little bit of that. But I would say if there's an aspect to his game that I have questions about, it would be that the ability to get out of the pocket and evade some of the pressure that we see in those situations.
That footage could be a little different for you because up here it's all 24 footage. So
Right,
how
that's
do
true.
you and NFL scouts evaluate Canadian university film where they're playing three downs on a bigger field with an extra guy on each side of the ball?
It's tough, but I think there's some parallels because our college game is so different where, you're going to get different styles. Now, obviously the rules are the same, like the hash marks are the same, the field's the same, but you just get different ideas about how to play the game from college. So it goes back to you evaluate the positional traits. You go back to arm strength, decision making, mobility, mechanics. Those are things that are kind of constant. So even if the Canadian game is very different with the 12 guys, with the different fields, uh, that part of it, I try not to get caught up in too much when evaluating. Like the X's and O's part of it, you almost put aside and you go back to just those positional values that you really care about for a quarterback. It goes down to accuracy, decision making, arm strength, and you kind of build out your scouting report from there.
How do you try to figure out the level of talent comparison for what Elgersma was playing in compared to, the elite in the NCAA?
Yeah, it's impossible, honestly, just because to have the frame of reference to be able to go in and be like, okay, this corner that he's throwing against here, will this guy play in the CFL? Will he play in the NFL? Like it's really impossible to have that database of knowledge for the level of competition. So I think that's where I rely so much more on the positional traits at that point. Decision making is decision making regardless of who you're playing against. If you're putting a ball in the right spot where your player can make a play on it, where you're, keeping it out of the defense, or you're not thrown into double coverage. You can identify robbers, you can identify linebackers. Those are the things that I try to go back to instead of, I think especially early in my career, there was a tendency to like over evaluate with the X's and O's and be like, okay, why is this team doing this? You have to have a knowledge of that, certainly, but I think more so when it comes to draft evaluating, it's more about what can this player do. And with Elgersma, you're able to see that without having a direct knowledge of the other 12 guys that he's necessarily playing against.
What's been some of the buzz behind the scenes within your scouting contacts in the NFL about Elgersma, and especially as this process has gone along for him, including the pro day that he performed at the University at Buffalo?
Yeah, everything I've heard has been really positive, and especially in this 2025 quarterback class that kind of lacks some pop, it lacks some star power. There's intrigue about a player that's a little bit of an unknown, and sometimes that can be a great asset to a prospect. Is that you haven't been exposed to 3 or 4 or 5 years of us over evaluating you, basically. So the Senior Bowl week was great for him, and I think the production that he had this past year in college was fantastic, and it speaks to that ability that he has. And I would say, as we sit here right now, the chance of him being drafted is strong. The Senior Bowl definitely helped with that. I mean, just showing his ability on a similar stage, like you mentioned, with some of the elite players from the NCAA. And that's an unparalleled opportunity. So I think what he's done for the past, I guess, 3 years as a starter up in Canada, the tape is all solid. And then looking the part of the Senior Bowl was huge for him as well.
Do you have him graded as a draftable prospect? And if so, is that likely the seventh round that you're looking at?
That's where I have him, is in the seventh round. I do think he's draftable, especially like I said, this quarterback class, it lacks some depth. And so I think we're getting to the point with guys like Taylor. It's okay, you pass the threshold for size, arm strength, experience, definitely production. And that's going to contrast with some guys we have coming out of, the US in terms of college football that that don't have as, I guess, remarkable traits, you would say. Guys who are going to they're not going to have the arm strength, or they're not going to have the size that's going to knock them down the list. So I definitely think that he's draftable. In my opinion, it would be in the seventh round.
What's the best case scenario for Elgersma if he's selected late or signed as an undrafted free agent as he goes into this potential NFL career?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to get to a spot where you have a veteran quarterback. I look at a team like the Los Angeles Rams, where they have Matthew Stafford, they have someone who's the clear cut number one, but you're in a system that is big on teaching and developing players there under Sean McVay. I even think a system like that, like a Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan system, where it is, predicated on space and timing, is going to be what's familiar to him. And again, his arm talent, his arm ability is going to translate to any scheme. But if he does end up being an undrafted free agent and he's trying to decide what's the best fit for me, like where do I need to go? That would be my advice. Get somewhere where there's an established veteran quarterback that you can learn the American game by watching. I would imagine he's probably going to be a practice squad guy his first year, just so he can kind of sit back and learn and get those reps.
Are there teams out there in the NFL where you can envision exactly that Elgersma comes in on the practice roster and he's given that time, perhaps it's a year or more, to develop, take in, learn the American game in a situation, as you alluded to, whether that's Matt Stafford with the Los Angeles Rams or elsewhere, that has a star quarterback, perhaps has a veteran backup even, and he can just focus on developing? Like, are those situations real in the NFL that you could envision for him?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Rams are a great one. I even think, the Kansas City Chiefs, that's the spot where Andy Reid loves developing quarterbacks. You obviously have the established veteran in Patrick Mahomes. They have established backups, two of them there. So I do think those situations are real. There's going to be teams like the Tennessee Titans or the Cleveland Browns that don't have that exact opportunity, but most teams are going to be able to afford that. I would say 25 of the 32 NFL teams are going to have a situation where there is a clear-cut starter, there is a clear-cut backup, and it would give you that opportunity to be a third or even fourth quarterback on a practice squad, where you can just almost take a redshirt year and really learn the game.
Let's move to the other intriguing Canadian quarterback in this draft. How do teams view Kurtis Rourke playing his entire senior season at Indiana on a torn ACL? And dealt with a
Yeah.
broken thumb too.
Well, toughness, number one, right? That's the first thing that pops up is you love that. It so much of our time is spent studying, hey, does this guy love the game? Do they love being a football player? For Kurtis Rourke, you don't have to worry about that, right? And it might impact his draft slot a little bit just because of the injury and the timeline from it. But his game shows really good delivery, really good velocity. When he does have, a healthy knee and he's able to drive the ball, you definitely see that from him. He can make pro throws. And accuracy and ball placement is probably something that needs to be worked on. But again, that goes back to playing with a hurt knee in 2024. How much does that impact your ability to put the ball in those tight spaces? But I have nothing but praise for him to gut out an injury like that or multiple injuries like that. It's just, I thought even before the injury, going back to 2023, really good college player. He projects as a backup at the next level. But there's tools there that can be developed. I would just say it goes back to, ball placement, accuracy or areas where he's got to get a little bit better. And by speeding up his release and playing healthy, those things could definitely be improved.
Do you have a draftable grade for Rourke? And if so, where's that range?
I do, and it's same range. It's that seventh round. I wouldn't be surprised, I guess, if he got into the sixth round just because of some of that experience that he has. And he's a good athlete. He is somebody that can make all the pro throws with the arm strength that he has. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's the sixth or seventh round. But again, he's projecting as a backup. Coming off the career at Ohio that he had, which was very prolific, and then what he did last year at Indiana. It's just fun to see him in that Indiana scheme. I think you kind of get excited about what that could look like moving to the next level.
Do you happen to have an NFL comparison for Rourke?
I don't as of now. I'm doing my top 50 player comps right now. I don't know that I usually try to get a comp for every quarterback, but as of now, I haven't made it quite that far down the list yet.
If he had been healthy, let's say for the draft process, do you believe that that would have helped his value and he could have gone earlier, perhaps sneaking into day two, or was that chatter never really realistic?
I don't think the day two chatter was realistic. Now, he could have helped himself, certainly. We've seen players like Brady Cook from Missouri help himself a lot in the pre draft process just by having a good shrine game, a good combine, and a good pro day. So the more opportunities you have, certainly the better. It can always improve your draft stock. But I don't think it was going to take him from being a round 6 player to a round 3 player. I don't think we would see that type of rise.
One last one I want to get in with you is Canadian receiver Elic Ayomanor. He has made a ton of crazy plays at Stanford, like that have been on your Sports Center down there, Sports Center up here. Where do you envision him potentially being selected in the 2025 NFL Draft?
Yeah, I think he's one of those day 2 players. He's certainly got a shot for round 2, and his combine performance was really positive. To be 6'2", right around 210 pounds, to run a 4.44 in the 40-yard dash. That was a really good time for him. I think the key will be, injury. He missed the 2022 season due to injury. He was banged up this past year. So that's going to be a big question mark, I think, with him. But he has pro size and traits to be an X or a Z receiver. He's physical, really good blocker in the run game, something that I always love from a wide receiver. But he has that frame to shield the ball from defenders. And he can make some things happen after the catch. I think the speed that he showed at the combine was a little surprising. I didn't expect 4.44 speed from him. It was really fantastic time. But it does point to some of the upside that he has. He should enter the NFL as I would think, a number 3 receiver for a team. We call him a big slot down here, big slot receivers. That would be the ideal for him. Even a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, they need a number 3 receiver. He would be so perfect there with what they have in A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith.
If Ayomanor can realize his high-end upside, could he be higher than a number 3? Where do you envision his
Absolutely.
projection in terms of his potential?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he could work his way up to a number 1. It wouldn't be surprising. Scheme is going to matter a little bit. I think consistency for him is going to be a key. And some of that goes back to, missing that first year with the injury. But the development he's shown at Stanford does point to he's going to continue to get better, especially once healthy. And I would just say, being able to better disguise his routes, getting into a scheme, you're going to expand your route tree naturally going from college to the NFL. Just becoming more consistent in that area is going to be huge for him. But I wouldn't say that there's a limit on his range as a wide receiver. With time and consistency, he could absolutely work his way into being a number 1.
Matt, you've been awesome bringing the goods. We really appreciate you sharing this insight, and I'm sure Canadians in our home and native land are going to appreciate the detail with which you've scouted these guys, even Taylor Elgersma being from Wilfrid Laurier University. You're out here trying to get film, man. Next time, if you need help with that, don't hesitate to give me a ring. We'll link you up. But it
For
sounds like
sure.
you're already there. So thank you so much for taking the time. And if you want to follow Matt, again, hit him up on X or Instagram at NFL Draft Scout. You're sort of, kind of, maybe a little bit of Canadian now because you've taken so well to these prospects. I think a lot of Canadians are going to like that.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. I would happily take that honor.
Thanks so much, Matt. We appreciate it. Good luck on the ESPN NFL Draft telecast as well.
Yeah, thanks so much.